The $3 bottle that saved my garden. How Grandma's hydrogen peroxide treatment beat $9 in fungicides. Most gardeners buy that bottle for one reason. It kills root rot. That is what everyone talks about. That is the story that circulates through gardening groups online. But there is something nobody tells you about hydrogen peroxide that changes everything. Something that has nothing to do with disease, nothing to do with fungus. Stay with me through this video, because I am going to show you how the real power of that $3 bottle sits in a completely different place. It is something my grandmother knew, something that explained why her garden produced twice what the neighbors produced on identical soil, and it has absolutely nothing to do with treating sick plants. If you have been here before, you know we focus on the forgotten methods. The practical solutions that fed American families before the chemical companies convinced us that every problem needed a shelf product. If you have not subscribed yet, I want you to join us. We upload every week, and here is what I need from you right now. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you have tried hydrogen peroxide for in your own garden. Have you used it at all? What happened? I want to know. Your experience matters because gardening is not one size fits all. And your feedback teaches me what works in your climate, your soil, your specific conditions. Hold on, I need to be direct about something for a moment. What I am about to explain is backed by real soil chemistry, real horticultural research from University Extension Services, not folklore, but the complete guide to how this works, why it works, and the exact mechanisms behind everything I am showing you today. That is all in the in-depth guide I have put together. You can find it in the description, and it is pinned in the top comment. The guide goes much deeper than a video ever can. It covers the science behind soil biology, microbial populations, oxygen saturation, all the pieces that traditional farmers understood intuitively, but few home gardeners learn. It is a resource worth having if you want to master this. Now, the real story. My grandmother never called it what it actually was. She called it waking up the soil. That phrase stayed with me my entire childhood. She would say it in that calm way she had, usually while mixing something in a watering can. Waking up the soil, I did not understand it then. What I understand now is that she was talking about soil biology, living microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, creatures so small you cannot see them, but that are absolutely responsible for whether a plant thrives or starves. When soil compacts, when it gets pressed down from rain or foot traffic or just years of not being amended, it becomes anaerobic. The oxygen gets squeezed out. The aerobic bacteria that break down nutrients and make them available to plant roots cannot survive without oxygen. They die off. What moves in to replace them is anaerobic bacteria, organisms that thrive in oxygen-poor conditions. Many of them produce toxins. Many of them feed on plant roots instead of creating the nutrients plants need. This is the soil condition that kills more home gardens than almost anything else. The traditional fix in modern gardening is to add more compost, add a cover crop, fill the soil, wait for it to improve. These methods work. They take time. They cost money if you do not make your own compost. Many home gardeners never get around to them because life happens. The garden sits there. Plants produce less. Fungal disease shows up. Someone goes to the garden center, buys those expensive bottles, and nothing really changes because the actual problem, dead, compacted, anaerobic soil, has not been addressed. Hydrogen peroxide at the right dilution does something immediate that those expensive bottles cannot do. It instantly oxygenates the soil. The peroxide breaks down into water and oxygen. That oxygen floods into the soil pores, waking up the dormant aerobic bacteria. In 3 to 5 days, you have a completely different microbial population at work. Aerobic organisms that actually build soil fertility. Organisms that break down organic matter into nutrients that plant roots can absorb. That is why my grandmother's plants produced more. That is why the same seed, the same watering schedule, the same sunlight produced better tomatoes on her side of the fence. The soil chemistry was different. The microbial life was different. She had learned early that you do not wait for the soil to fail. You do not spray something expensive when the problem arrives. You catch the problem before it starts. You manage the soil the way a farmer manages a herd, with constant small attention, not emergency treatment. This is where most home gardeners get it wrong. They think soil is just dirt. Mix in some compost, water when dry, plant something, and hope. But soil is a living system. It breathes. It needs oxygen the way your body needs oxygen. Compacted soil is suffocating soil. And suffocated soil cannot support healthy roots, no matter how much water you give it. The hydrogen peroxide method my grandmother used for compacted soil was simple. 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide mixed into 1 gallon of water. That is your dilution. No measuring cups needed. A tablespoon is a tablespoon. Apply this mixture to the problem area at the start of the growing season, before you plant anything. Let it soak in over 2 or 3 days. Then work your amendments into the soil as you normally would. The peroxide has already started breaking up the compaction, opening air pockets that your compost and aged manure can fill. I have seen this work on clay soil that felt like concrete. I have watched it turn a choked garden bed into something that a hand trowel could actually penetrate. The key is not to expect magic overnight. The key is to understand what is happening. The peroxide is killing anaerobic pathogens, introducing oxygen, and waking up the soil biology that actually builds structure. Now, before we continue, I need your attention on something. Most gardeners never realize that soil compaction and root rot are often connected. A compacted bed stays wet longer. That wetness invites the pathogens. The hydrogen peroxide solves both problems at once. It opens the soil and kills the pathogens. But the full picture of how this works, the timeline, the exact measurements for different soil types, and the other uses I have not mentioned yet, all of that is covered in depth in the guide that we have put together. It is available in the description and pinned in the top comment. This is a paid resource, and it walks you through the complete approach to soil health the way my family has practiced it for generations. If you want to go deeper, it is there. Timing matters. The best window to use hydrogen peroxide on compacted soil is early spring, when the soil is still cool but beginning to warm. The microbial life is waking up. The peroxide arrives at exactly the right moment to assist that awakening. If you wait until midsummer and the soil is hot and already established with the wrong population of microbes, the effect is less dramatic. But even then it works. I have applied it in July to struggling beds and seen improvement within 2 weeks. One more thing about compacted soil, it often carries memory. If a bed has been compacted for 3 or 4 seasons, one application might not be enough. You may need 2 applications, 2 weeks apart. The first opens the beginning of the pores. The second drives deeper. Your grandmother would have known this through experience. She would have felt the soil change under her hands. Most modern gardeners never spend enough time touching their soil to develop that feel. That tactile knowledge is what gets lost when we rely entirely on products and advice from strangers. Your hands know your soil better than any bottle or bag ever will. The peroxide is a tool. The knowledge is what you build over time by paying attention. Now, before we continue, I need you to hold something close for a moment. The reason hydrogen peroxide works where expensive fungicides fail is not mysterious. It is not proprietary science locked behind a patent or a university degree. The mechanism is straightforward chemistry that your great-grandfather understood without naming it. Oxygen breaks down fungal cell walls. That is it. But understanding the why changes everything about how you use it. Which brings me to something critical. The deeper patterns, the signals that tell you when to apply peroxide versus when to hold off. The exact soil conditions that invite root rot in the first place. The crop rotation sequences that prevent fungal disease from taking hold season after season. Those belong in the guide. The ebook available in the description and pinned in the comments breaks down the whole system. It is a paid resource, and it is where the real horticultural logic lives. This video gives you the 5 uses. The guide gives you the framework for knowing when and why to use them, year after year. The second use of hydrogen peroxide addresses something most gardeners never think about until it is too late: contaminated containers and tool sterilization. You pull last year's seed trays out of the garage. You wash them with the hose. You fill them with potting mix. You sow your tomato seeds. 2 weeks later, half of them fail to germinate or they damp off. They emerge, then collapse at the soil line as if someone had cut them down with a knife. You assume the seeds were bad. You buy new seeds. You replant in the same trays. Same problem. The issue was never the seeds. Damping off is caused by soil-borne fungi, Pythium again mostly, that persist on the inside surface of unwashed containers. Plain water does not kill them. The fungus waits. Your new seedlings emerge into an environment already colonized. Hydrogen peroxide solves this in 3 minutes. Fill a 5-gallon bucket with water. Add 1 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide. Submerge your trays, your tools, your dibbers, your pots. Let them soak for 3 minutes. The peroxide oxidizes the fungal spores before they ever touch your soil. Pull the trays out. Rinse them once with clean water. Let them dry. That is all. Your seed starting setup is clean. The same solution works for anything that touches soil. Hand tools, pruning shears, even your boots if you have been working in a garden where disease has taken hold. Wipe them down. Soak the metal parts. This is not complicated. It is not expensive. It is preventive maintenance that costs less than a coffee and prevents weeks of loss. Most gardeners skip this step entirely. They spray expensive fungicides on plants that are already sick, wondering why the problem persists. Prevention, though, sterilizing your containers and tools before you ever introduce vulnerable seedlings into them, that stops the whole cycle before it starts. This is where old farming families gain their advantage, not because they had special knowledge, because they had discipline. They cleaned their tools. They cleaned their containers. They never assumed last year's setup was safe for this year's crop. A third use, and this one is subtler but equally important, involves seed germination itself. Some seeds carry fungal pathogens inside their seed coat. Tomato seeds, cucumber seeds, melon seeds. The pathogens do not harm the seed. They wait. The seed germinates. The young root emerges into soil. The fungus activates. The seedling fails. You can break this chain before it starts by soaking seeds in a very dilute hydrogen peroxide solution before planting. 1 teaspoon of 3% peroxide per 1 cup of water. Soak your seeds for 30 minutes. Remove them. Rinse them once. Plant them immediately. The peroxide has oxidized any fungal spores on the seed coat without damaging the seed itself. Does every seed need this? No. If your seeds come from a trusted source and you have clean containers and clean soil, you will never have a problem. But if you are saving seeds from your own garden or buying from sources where you cannot verify the seed history, this one step stops damping off and seed rot before it ever begins. Your grandmother would have done this without question. She would have had no way to sterilize seeds otherwise. The alternative was loss. The fourth use is one my family learned through trial and failure over decades. Peroxide clears compacted soil, not the kind of compaction you fix with a tiller. The kind that builds up year after year when you walk the same paths, when rain has packed the earth dense and airless between your rows. Compacted soil suffocates roots. Water pools on the surface instead of draining. Nutrients stay locked where plants cannot reach them. The soil becomes a brick instead of something alive. You can dig it up and turn it over, but that is work that tears the soil structure further. The easier way is chemical oxidation. Mix 1 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide with 1 gallon of water. Pour it slowly across your compacted areas. Do this on a day when rain is not forecast. The peroxide soaks in. As it breaks down, the oxygen radicals it releases expand tiny air pockets throughout the soil structure. The effect is subtle. You will not see it happen. But within 2 weeks, your soil becomes workable again. Worms return. Microbes move freely. Water penetrates instead of pooling. One farmer I know near here uses this method every spring on his vegetable rows. He says it cuts his tilling time by half. He does not tear the soil with machinery. He lets the peroxide do the chemistry. The fifth use brings us back to where we started. Disease prevention in the soil itself. Not treating a sick plant, but preventing sickness from taking hold in the first place. Most gardeners wait until disease appears. By then, the pathogen has already spread through the soil, through the roots of healthy plants nearby. Prevention is simpler and cheaper. Once per season, usually in early spring before planting, water your entire garden with the same 1 cup to 1 gallon mixture. Broadcast it across beds and rows. The peroxide oxidizes fungal spores and bacterial cells in the soil without harming the microbes you want there. The beneficial bacteria and fungi that build soil fertility recover first because they are adapted to healthy soil. The pathogens do not. Your soil becomes hostile to disease before the season even begins. This is not something a garden center sells you. They cannot. They cannot make a product that costs $3 and lasts a season. Their business model requires a new bottle every time a new problem appears. Before we continue, I need to level with you on something. Everything I have shared so far, the 5 uses, the dilution ratios, the timing, this is the foundation, but the full picture goes deeper. The reasons why peroxide works, the soil chemistry behind oxidation, the signs that tell you when to use it and when to hold back, the mistakes that waste it, the ways to combine it with other old remedies, all of that fills the guide we have put together. The ebook is in the description and pinned in the comments. It contains 15 years of my family's notes on hydrogen peroxide use across every vegetable we grow. The mechanisms are explained, the failures documented, the patterns that separate a successful gardener from someone just guessing are all there. This video is the surface. The guide goes deep. Most people learn this lesson the hard way. They spend money, they fail, then they call their grandmother or find an old farming manual and realize the answer was always there, waiting on a drugstore shelf for $1.70. Your situation is different now. You do not have to spend $90 on products that fail. You do not have to watch plants die while you stand there wondering what you did wrong. This is the secret I promised you at the beginning. The one that separates the gardeners who lose crops to preventable disease from the ones who do not. It is not complicated, it is not new, and it is not expensive. Hydrogen peroxide works because it obeys the laws of chemistry, not marketing. When a fungal pathogen attacks your soil or your roots, it does not care whether you paid $3 or $90 for the treatment. It responds to oxidation. It responds to the oxygen radicals that hydrogen peroxide releases as it breaks down. That chemical reaction does not vary based on the price tag on the bottle. Your grandmother knew this. The farmers in Lancaster County know this. The extension services have documented this for decades. But somewhere between the 1970s and now, the story got buried under so much advertising and product positioning that most home gardeners forgot it was ever true. I want you to do something this week. Walk to your kitchen garden or your raised beds. Look at every plant that is struggling, the ones with yellow leaves, the ones that wilt even when the soil is moist, the ones where you suspect something is wrong but you cannot quite name it. Do not call the garden center. Do not spend money on another bottle of something you do not understand. Instead, buy a bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide. It costs $3. Pour it into your watering can at the ratio I showed you. Apply it once a week for 2 weeks. Watch what happens to those plants. This is not a miracle cure. It is not a substitute for good soil, proper drainage, or sensible watering practices. But it will do what $300 in specialty products will not. It will give your struggling plants a real chance to recover. The chemistry works the same way it worked in 1924 when your great-grandmother used it. The same way it worked in 1974 when garden centers were still a reasonable place to get advice instead of a place to spend money you did not have. The same way it works today in gardens across this country where people have stopped believing that expensive always means effective. You are going to see a difference. Some plants will recover completely within 3 weeks. Others will simply stop declining. A few will tell you that the damage was too far gone. That is honest. That is real. But the ones that do respond will produce fruit. They will survive the season. They will give you something worth eating. That is what we mean by saving the garden. Not turning every plant into a champion. Just keeping the ordinary vegetables alive long enough to do what they are supposed to do. The plain brown bottle in the drugstore does that. My family has proven it across 4 generations. The universities have measured it. Hundreds of home gardeners have tested it and reported back. The chemistry is sound. The cost is trivial. The only barrier is the marketing that convinced you it had to be complicated. Start small. 1 bottle, 1 application, 1 struggling plant. Watch it. Take notes if you are inclined. Compare it to a plant you did not treat. Then decide for yourself whether the dollar bottle works better than the $90 version. I think you will find that it does. That is the whole thing. The secret, the method, the answer to the problem that sent you searching for this video in the first place. Not lost, just buried. And now, because you watched this far, you know where to dig. Thank you for watching this far. If this helped you, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next method, and there are many more coming. Leave a comment below and tell me which plant in your garden needs this treatment most. Hit that notification bell so you catch every new upload as soon as it goes live.